Okay, so Reese, a couple things to walk you through. First, you asked about the sphere. So this is just me warming up a little bit. One of the things we talked about in class is that a cross-section of a sphere is just a circle. So if you wanted to sketch it all out, what we would do is draw one plane in perspective. So we have this plane in perspective. We're gonna find the midpoint. Of that, and then we're gonna kind of cast up from that midpoint. So this point right here is going to be sort of the middle point of our intersecting plane, and we want to make this basically like the opposite of the first plane, but about the same size. I mean, ideally exactly the same size. So we're kind of coming back to maybe about there. So then we're going to do the very same thing. I'm going to draw that all the way through. And really, ideally, that should be hitting the midpoint at the top and the bottom. And then we'll draw vertical lines there. So now we have kind of plane 1 and plane 2. And all we're going to do is draw a circle on each one of these planes. So we know a circle in perspective is an ellipse. And if you want to, you can certainly kind of map out the entire plane here. All I'm going to do is sort of eyeball, here's the middle point, here's the middle point, here's the middle point, and here's the middle point. So I'm going to draw as kind of continuously as I can with a nice even arc. There's our first circle, or ellipse, because it's in perspective, and we're going to do the same thing just with that other plane. So we're going to have that same starting point, but over here, we're going to be probably about there, and let's say about here. So the same thing once again. A nice even arc, hopefully not winding up with anything that looks too pointy. So that feels like it's getting a little bit stretched there, like it seems a little bit too stretched in that direction. But we're going to go ahead and forge forward. So basically, you have your cross section in this direction, and now we're just going to attach, kind of connect those edges. So we'll go from this outside edge over to the edge of this ellipse, all the way around. So that wound up looking a little bit misshapen, but really at the end of the day, what a sphere should look like is it should be a circle. So here we can hover, 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 hover. So it's going to look something like this. This sketch is really just to help you understand one way we might approach that. And in fact, with this sketch, we could have drawn a plane going in this orientation and drawn an ellipse on this plane as well. And that would have given us another kind of set of lines to connect. But again, like for the sketchbook and really for your purposes in this class, you can just draw a circle. If you draw that circle and you want to make sure that it's truly a circle, you can draw it into a box, actually a square. And what that will do is it will let you kind of check to see, you know, are the edges of your circle all the same, which they should be, and is the circle touching kind of that outside perimeter directly at the middle point? So this one is a little bit flat, but it's in the right direction. When it comes to casting a shadow for a sphere, the best way to think about this, again, for kind of the scope of this class, is to consider where this sphere is making contact with the ground. And for this, we're going to know that that point of contact is going to be a little ellipse right on the ground. And for cast shadow, all we're going to do is take that little ellipse and kind of extend it out. From there, we can cross hatch in. And this is going to be what I might consider good enough for this class. You can certainly cast using a mapped out sphere, but you're not going to really need to use that. So we're going to stick with this technique just for now. So one of the things to be aware of is that you want this cast shadow to be concentric with sort of that ground point. So this should be a nice, smooth connecting line right in there. Of course, you do want to think about where your light source is. So for this sketch, our light source would be somewhere kind of up and to the left, which is a fairly typical product design or industrial design light source placement. So the other thing you asked about is cylinders, and we'll get to that. There are a couple different ways to cast a shadow from a cylinder. You can either cast kind of from the edges of the ellipse or from the edges of the bounding box. So, and I think really what happened is that people in class preferred the bounding box. So we'll start with that. And hopefully you can see these lines. I'm just giving myself, I'm drawing a rectilinear volume, doing my best to make that top and bottom face a perfect square. And that is just to make sure that the ellipse that we draw in there is going to look really circular. Okay, so now we've got that bounding box. Hopefully you can see that okay. I know the lines are faint. From here, we're going to map out the top ellipse and the bottom. So we're just finding our middle points. And then we're going to draw in our ellipse. One of the other things we talked a little bit about in class is that hopefully you're getting to the point where you don't necessarily need to go kind of arc by arc for your ellipse. So if you can get to the point where you can kind of do more of one continuous motion, I would encourage you to start practicing that, because over time you really want to get to the point where you can be sort of just freehanding your ellipses in. I actually find it pretty helpful to go kind of arc by arc. I find that it helps you kind of double check your perspective. So now we're just attaching that top ellipse to the bottom ellipse. And so for casting a shadow off of the bounding box, what we're going to do is we're going to use that light source. Again, kind of basically in our upper left-hand corner. And maybe we're coming, I don't know, something like that. So we're going to come from the top corners of our bounding box here at this same angle. So we're going to pull these lines down. And then we're going to pull lines up from the bottom corners. So what I mean by that is coming up from here, 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 and here. And so maybe we're doing something like this. And we're keeping that line direction, like these lines that I'm drawing now should be basically parallel with each other. So sometimes what I'll do, like I just did, is I'll go over kind of go over one of my original lines again, just make sure that I am putting my lines in the correct spot. So now we're looking at like the place where the top line and the bottom line intersect. So that's going to be there, here, here, and here. Now if we connect these 4 spots, what we're going to wind up with is a kind of plane that's cast on essentially the table that our cylinder is sitting on. So I'm going to connect these using my pen. And now I'm going to just go ahead and kind of break this up so I can draw an ellipse within this plane that's on the ground. So from here, we're just going to put those arcs in. Now what we're going to do is we're going to come from the edge of this ellipse that you just drew in on the ground plane to the edge of the bottom of the cylinder. So you'll just draw a straight line connecting those. And then we can cross hatch that in. So that's what you're working with there. So you can see kind of here's the projected ellipse that's falling on the ground, and that's what the cast shadow would look like. We could, of course, connect this back line, but we know that that's going to be kind of hidden behind that cylinder. So I think I don't quite have time right now to show you that other technique, but I'm happy to go over it when you're back in class on Wednesday. All right.